Welcome to Talk It Up, a Christian parenting podcast where our goal is to discuss 21st century topics to help you raise your kids. Hey, welcome back to Talk It Up. We're super excited that you've joined us. I have an incredible guest with us today, and our conversation is going to be super important. If you've ever had a kid in sports, if you ever thought you wanted a kid in sports, if you've just dreamed of this idea that your kid is going to be the next version of every professional athlete, today is the day that you want to listen to the rest of this. We are helping parents parent their kids in a tough world. And our guest today is Michael Dean. Michael is a former professional athlete with the Carolina Panthers. Yes, Michael, welcome to the show, bud. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
We are beyond excited to have a conversation with you. You have a really great history here at Mount Bethel, and I believe it started in our rec program, and you've been a coach and a volunteer inside of our rec program here at Mount Bethel. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. We've been a part of the program since 2017. So it's been a great experience for not only myself, but for my family as well.
That's so awesome. And you run a summer camp. Atlanta Kings is the name of the football summer camp that you run here at Mount Bethel.
Yep, it's a partnership. Yep, so we run a summer camp.
Yep,
that's
right. We do run a partnership.
Yeah,
our rec program is fantastic in the group down there. But that's how we know Michael. And you've got a great background. I want to jump in real quick just to your background, just to give our listeners a little bit of insight. So born and raised in Florida.
Yep.
All right. Went to play football at the University of Illinois. Okay. What other sports did you play in high school before you went to play football?
I played football, baseball, and basketball.
Baseball, and basketball. All right. So you were the guy that was always involved in sports. You grew up around it. All right. Went to University of Illinois. All right. And then you got drafted in what year?
2000.
2000. So right to the Panthers. All right. And quarterback?
Steve Berline.
Steve Berline. All right. So I imagine that you have so many stories and so much insight and so much background into this sports world. We're not going to get to all of it, but for sure. But this is a really big conversation for us for a few reasons. And one of those reasons is a stat that we pulled. And so this is super powerful because I had a background in sports. And so this is really powerful. This was pulled from the Georgia State University. And they said this. So you're in a really, really small percentage of people who ever played pro sports. Here's what it says. The percentage of high school to pro in football is 0.09%. So you're a one percenter. I mean, you're a more than one percenter that made it to professional football, which is absolutely incredible. So these stats are great. We can actually post a link to this. I believe that we can get a link to that in the some description information. But this is what I'd like to talk about first. What are the benefits of kids playing in sports?
There's a plethora of benefits, Matt. When you go, and thank you for the amazing introduction. You know, when I think about my journey from Key West, Florida, to this point now, and I think about where sports laid the foundation for my life, not only from a spiritual perspective, but just from an overall foundational perspective, to where it taught me accountability. It taught me how to work within a team atmosphere. It taught me how to have dedication, commitment.
Yeah, right.
You know, but mostly it taught me to have a self-purpose.
Yeah.
You know, my first time, I'm the youngest of three. My older brother played football before me, and I was the water boy on his team.
Okay.
I was 4 years old.
All right.
And that was my first introduction to sports.
Okay.
And immediately when I walked on the field, I felt the connection. I felt a sense of purpose.
Yeah.
And from that time into the end of my career, and even now, it became my why at that time. It really allowed me to begin honing in on my purpose and being able to really work on something daily.
Yeah.
And have it to be to something that I can depend on throughout the life cycle of my life, to where initially having amazing coaches and having a support group start to pour into me, and I understood a sense of community really started from sports, and it allowed me to really hone those things throughout different life stages, and obviously perfect them during times of my athletic career as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the idea that it provided you a space of accountability, because accountability is so vitally important to kids as they grow up.
Absolutely.
And parents, as parents, we know it, right? And sometimes we try to put our kids in positions of accountability, and they kind of reject that because we're just mom and dad.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? But allowing somebody else to be a part of that accountability is a really great thing. So I love the accountability accountability part. One of the things that you say on your website is this, and I just we pulled it from the Atlanta Kings. I think it's so awesome. It's great.
Thank you.
Our goal is to provide an atmosphere where your student athlete can learn the key valuable lessons football can teach them. My overall mission is to pass along the knowledge and experience I have gained to help your kids develop successful habits, love everything they participate in, and maximize all of the blessings God has provided them.
Absolutely.
I love it. One of the things that you say in here is provide, to maximize all of the blessings God has given to them. In what way does your group, the Atlanta Kings football, and just in your coaching in general, how do you talk to the kids in your teams, the kids in your camps about maximizing their God-given potential?
There's a plethora of different things that we really harp on, but the first thing that is really big with us is having a connection to self.
Yeah.
Right? Becoming your best self.
Okay.
I'm very big on that. I think comparison is a thievery of joy. I think it's pernicious in a lot of different ways. And so it's really meeting that kid to where he's at, and having a clear understanding of what is his goals, what is his purpose.
Yeah.
But also having a joy component of it. Because sports is very hard, as you well know.
It is. It's right.
It's a long journey.
Yep.
And I tell parents all the time, enjoy the moments.
Yeah.
Right. Really lock into the moments that you're being able to spend with your child. Enjoy the overall scalability of the skill sets that your child is being able to nurture and hone in on. And within the Kings, we really focus on being the Kings, setting a standard for yourself, being your best self, being an example for others, not just on the field, but overall in your classrooms, in your home, in your community, having, obviously very religious based, having a trust in God, because as you well know, with being an athlete, there's going to be a lot of highs, there's going to be a lot of lows.
Oh yeah, that's for
and you
sure.
have to have faith, you have to have trust, you have to have commitment. And so, the main purpose of creating the Atlanta Kings Academy was to really hone in on the full 360 life cycle of what a student athlete is. It's not just on the field, it's being able to understand all the other silos that it takes to be a successful athlete. Most people only focus on the field commitment, and that's where the partnership with Mount Bethel really harness on, is that we really focused on the overall holistic being of each player.
That's right.
And making sure that they are foundationally infrastructured to be their best self. And whatever results come with that, you can live with it. But most importantly, making sure that they're connected to their why. They have a full traditional being of faith-based or, activities and thought process. But then lastly, enjoying each moment, enjoying each step along the way. Because when you look back at your career, not looking to the left or to the right of other people's accomplishments, you feel very comfortable in what you've been able to achieve and really why God put you on this earth.
Yeah, that's right. Man, you hit on so many great things. I mean, you've got the accountability part, you got the dedication part. There's a lot of goal setting that comes with kids being in sports, and I've got these personal goals. You nailed it when you talk about this comparison is the thief of joy, right? And sports is very difficult for a kid to just run their own path and incrementally get better on their own and not look around. Right? And all the people that are around them like, well, I'm not getting as better as that kid, and I'm not getting better as she is, and why can't I shoot free throws like this? And man, I wish I was faster so I could actually run that post route. And so it's really difficult for kids to do that. But sports, and I fully agree with this, sports can kind of provide some guardrails to say, hey, your goal is to be a better version of you tomorrow than you are today.
1% a day.
And what can you do in order to be the best version of you? And then you nailed it, and I got to say, this is great, because that's God's plan for us, right? Is comparison can crush us and rob us of peace, but what can we do to be the best versions of ourselves? And so your group, the Atlanta Kings Football Academy, you guys bring that to kids, and that's your goal and your mission in order to put that in.
Yeah, because I'm a walking testament of that.
That's
I'm
so
from
good.
Key West, Florida, right? 6 miles long, 7 miles wide. We have one high school, right? We have one high school, one middle school.
Yeah.
And I wasn't the biggest, I wasn't the strongest, I wasn't the fastest throughout my career. But my parents did a phenomenal job of connecting my why to my purpose and being able to put me in the incubator and allowing me to grow and evolve and develop at God's rate, right? And I was always able to be comfortable in my own being and in my own skin
Yeah.
and in my own accomplishments.
Yeah.
And, I think that that's extremely important when you're looking at, especially in today's world of social media and so much external pressures
Sure.
that
Yeah.
comes with growing up
Absolutely.
in this internet phase of
Yeah.
society, to where a lot of parents get lost in the hype. And a lot
Yeah.
of parents get, kids get lost in the hype and the results right now. And it's
Yeah.
such a long runway to get to, let's just say, Thursday's NFL draft, right? And when you listen to those stories that you will, as those guys are walking across that stage, it's not just a meteoric rise. It's
Right.
a lot of ebb and flows. It's a lot of ups and downs.
That's right.
You have to have your small knit community that believes in you, supports you.
Yeah.
But the most importantly, you have to have a full intrinsic trust in God, because you have to know. And I knew that from the beginning. I had a purpose. I know I have a purpose. I know why I'm here. And so therefore, no matter what was going on at that time, because I had that foundational infrastructure,
That's right.
I always had a smile on my face,
Yeah.
because I knew that, if I just continue to put my best foot forward, God would take care of the rest, and my family would be
right.
there as a foundational infrastructure as well.
Man, that's so good. If there's something that we can pass on to our kids, is that understanding that highs and lows, they exist. Sports, outside of sports. But if you have your trust in something that doesn't change, a Heavenly Father that loves you regardless of that, and you just keep putting the next foot forward, as you said, then you can actually succeed in what you'd like to do.
Yep.
And so, man, we covered it. I believe that sports are great for kids. I've believed it for a very long time. I think that they do all of the things that your group is, trying to get them to do, and it's wonderful. You mentioned your parents, and I imagine that they did so many great things, and we can chat about those. But now you're kind of looking back at how they raised you in sports, and you've got a wife, Keisha, and you've got Michael Jr.'s son. He's 12 right now. And so my question would be kind of jumping over to the adult side.
Of course.
Looking back at how your parents raised you in the sports world, you were in 3 sports, you were obviously a very gifted athlete. What kind of things did they do very well in raising you as a very gifted athlete to help you succeed?
Allow me to dream.
Oh, wow, that's good.
Initially
Yeah.
allowed me to dream, to say, you know what, Michael, I hear that you said that you're going to be an NFL player one day.
Yeah.
They nurtured that, and they really allowed me to stay in that bubble where,
Okay.
you look at the stats, like you mentioned, 1%
Yeah.
of athletes make it, 0.000 make it from Key West, Florida, right?
Amen to that. That's right.
So it really condenses that number down even
right.
more. And so they allowed me to dream, but then also they put me around some amazing coaches that they trusted. My dad never coached me one time throughout my entire career. I had some amazing coaches that they entrusted with really enforcing that dream and understanding that it was going to take hard work, dedication, commitment. I was
That's
a skinny
right.
kid.
Yeah.
I wasn't that big. And so
Yeah.
they really allowed me to dream, but then also start to put the steps in place
Okay.
of what it was going to take to get there.
That's
and
right.
they held me accountable. As I got older, they started to hold me more accountable to my goals. So each year we would sit down, and my mom, my dad would have me write down my goals.
Yeah.
And then they would say, okay, those are the goals. Now, write down the steps that you are willing to commit to get
so good.
there.
Yeah,
So
so
then
good.
we didn't really have a lot of combative
Yeah.
sessions in our household of my dad getting on me about me not working hard or what have you. He would just pull out my goals, and he would pull out the commitment.
That's right.
And
Yeah.
then it was a clear understanding. As if I said I was going to do 50 push-ups that day, did you do 50 push-ups?
That's right.
Right? And if not, then you have to reassess your goals.
Yeah.
So I always stayed in a sense of reality, but still had that sense of dream as well. I'm the youngest of 3, and so I have the most energy. And so obviously I was blessed to
the
have
most energy. That's good.
Yeah, and so I was blessed to have my sister is very even keel. She's the middle child.
Yeah.
And then my brother, is pretty even keel as well, but I was chasing him.
Yeah.
He's 7 years older than me.
Okay.
And so that kind of helped have my competitive drive, because I knew if I can beat him, he was my first
That's
challenge
right. Yeah,
to beat.
I know that. I'm a younger brother, so
There
I
you
was
go,
always trying to
right?
keep up with Big Brother and all of his friends.
Absolutely. And then coming from a small knit community in Key West, I didn't know this at the time, but obviously it's hot year round. I was able to hone up my skill set, annually. And also just having a sense of community all throughout wherever I went. My pastor or my family members or my friends, my parents' friends, they held me accountable.
Yeah.
And then lastly, just really having a sense of purpose within a religious base. We went to church every Sunday.
Yeah.
It really gave me a sense of calmness, to understand
Yeah,
that
good.
not only did God bless me to have athletic talents, but he also blessed me with a lot of other talents that I didn't just hone for myself. I was always willing to pass on any of the blessings from a mental, financial, or athletic perspective to others as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. We hear so many times that the parents' influence in kids and sports is such a massive influence, probably far bigger than they realize it really is. And another stat shows that 40% plus of students who are playing youth sports end up never wanting to play high school sports. And one of the things that comes out is because of the parents' drive for their kids to actually achieve more than maybe they did in their life, and this really, really, really big push. I think it's fantastic, all the stuff that your parents did with you. Is there anything that they did that you look back on and say, man, I wish they wouldn't have quite done that? That was a little bit, but it sounds like, they were fantastic. And I've got a great story with that too. I've got a story I can tell after you say that. But I have to ask the question, is there anything looking back that you say, hey, I really wish they'd have done that differently, and I'm now going to change that with Michael Jr. and how Keisha and I actually parent Michael Jr. and his athletic ability?
I think I wish I would have listened more.
Oh, wow.
My dad was a fire chief, bigger guy. And, as I got to a certain point, probably in my middle school career, I started to feel myself because of my results. And my dad was always a huge sports enthusiast. And he had the fortuitous understanding of what it was going to take once I got to the NFL, per se, from a body style and size perspective. And so when he would invite me to the firehouse in the mornings, and he would want me to lift weights with him.
Got it.
But that was coming off of me having a very good game Friday night. So I'm like, I don't need to lift weights. I don't need to do those things.
Right.
And so when I think back, I think that's probably the biggest thing, is not understanding the reasoning why. And most kids don't at the time, because we have such a longer perspective, because we've been on this earth longer.
That's right.
And so I think that from that aspect of not listening overall to understand that they have seen where I'm trying to go.
Got it.
And have the runway to get there. But then also the approach. Obviously the parental guidance was more stern and harder,
Got it.
And so I understand that I needed that. But I've also understood with Michael Jr., he's growing up in a different society.
Right.
He's not me. And that's I'm a tourist, right? And so, I'm always on competitive mode. It doesn't take me much to get there.
Yeah.
And that's probably one of the things that I've learned from my parents, because they had two other kids, was that we all have different personalities. So they were able to fine-tune 3 personalities. But with us only having one child, it's one personality. So it's more internalized. How do Keisha and I interconnect with him and allow him to foster and grow and evolve and not become us?
Got it.
I think with them, they had 3 kids, and I think we've all pulled some personality traits from my parents.
Yeah.
But it was easier to figure out when in comparison to you only having one.
Yeah, okay. So that's really good. Let's talk about how you parent Michael Jr., having so much success in your career in football. And let's just talk through this. So accountability is huge. Dedication is big. You've got this really great support that you grew up underneath with your parents. Do you have a couple just like, hey, this is really how you should do it as a parent with your student? I'll tell you one quick story that I have, and I tell this story to everybody who will ever listen to it. So my dad, he coached me until I was little, and then he realized I don't want to coach him anymore, which was the best decision he could have ever made, just like you. But there was always something that he made sure he did on the car ride home. And I look back at it, and I didn't know it at the time, but this was so important, is he never talked first. So after a game, whatever it was, good, bad, win, lose, draw, whatever sport it was, he never started the conversation of, hey, how did you think that went? Or maybe you should have. Or do you think that you could have done better doing this? There was never the conversation start. I had to start the conversation. And I was always starting a conversation because I wanted to get better. But that's one thing that I remember back that I passed on to my kids as well. I try not to start the conversation. So is there like a couple like quick hit tips that you might have for us when, parenting Michael Jr., you and Keisha, and things like, hey, I got to stay away from that because, woo, that was tough.
Yeah, there's a plethora of things. I think initially it's a long journey, right? And, I started when I was 4. My nephew, Trey Dean, currently plays for the Chiefs. He started when he was 4. Michael started when he was 4. That's a long time.
It's a long time.
And the first thing I would tell parents, and we do the same, is make sure that you guys are connected to the initial reasoning why you started. Because that anytime it becomes a little bit fragmented, you can always go back, and that's part of your why.
Yeah,
right. Why did Michael initially choose this particular sport?
Right.
What things is he trying to get accomplished? Or what foundational things are we trying to get as parents to have him get accomplished as he's playing this particular sport?
That's so
right?
good.
Because it always allows you to come back to ground zero.
That's right.
You know, and then from there, depending on the age of your child, I would say, let's just say from kindergarten to 5th grade, it's all developmental. It's that's all I focus on is development, getting better, 1% a day, like loving the game, putting the infrastructure of understanding of that game so that he can become his best self. Because the more that he doesn't understand, the less probably he's going to become his best self.
For sure.
Right?
Yep,
and so
absolutely.
what brought us over to Mount Bethel was literally we were driving down Johnson Ferry, and we saw these kids, you know, playing soccer, what have you. We saw the infrastructure, and we saw the coaching. And we just moved out to the area. And that was what gravitated us over here, was like that right there. We obviously it had a competitive element to it, but that was secondary to the love. We saw how happy the kids was. We saw the community-based infrastructure, but we also saw the coaching and development.
Got it.
And so initially that's what made us feel comfortable as parents to bring Michael over and have him start to participate in the sports here because that connected to our internal foundational touch points that we thought was important. And that was at 4 and 5 years old. Right? And so from 5 to 11, we really just hone in on that. Now, once you get to middle school, it becomes a little bit more serious.
It's a different game, right?
It's a different game, right? You have to now make that transition to say, okay, now that we've made that transition where it seems as though you love this particular sport, right? How can we put together an infrastructure to continuously enhance the accountability that comes with the sport and to where you say that you want to go? It may just be, hey, dad or mom, I just want to play in middle school. Right, it goes back to goal setting.
That's right.
Or I want to play on my high school team. Or I want to go and play collegiately or professionally. Because once you do that, especially at that age, I think parents initially have too high of goals when the kid is 7 years old. That's too heavy initially.
I agree with that, absolutely.
Right, and it's more result-based. And anything that's result-based, you don't really have a foundational touch point of how he's getting there. So how are you going to scale it? He may have scored 5 touchdowns just because he was the fastest person.
That's right.
But that doesn't mean that's going to scale unless he's developed and unless he has the mindset and skill set to continuously enhance those results, right? And so from a middle school perspective, that's when you really start to tie the goals to his actual day-to-day activities.
Got it.
And you have to transfer those responsibilities. Initially, it's 100% yours to probably his when they first start. And then it comes 90-10. Once you get to middle school, it should start to balance out to where it's probably going to be around 70-30 in 6th grade. Right, where you're still carrying.
Where he's setting the goals or she's setting the goals.
Yeah, and you're still carrying the commitment part.
Okay, got it.
Because they're kids. They have a lot of other things that they, are attentive to. And so we understand that right now we're still carrying more of that. He's not going to wake up unless he's just an outlier and says, you know what, I want to go run 4 miles today, Dad, because I want to get into supreme shape. And so we understand that he's still developing a lot of the different committable perspectives. And so we tie that to now, hey, we're going to write down your goals. We're going to write down the commitment part of it. We know that we're going to still have to get you up and say, hey, Michael, you have training, or hey, why don't we go in the backyard? We understand that piece. But over time, those things are transferable to him. So by the time he gets to 9th grade, he's internalized the commitment, he's internalized the accountability, he's internalized the dedication, and now you become secondary to that. And so when he doesn't feel like doing it, then you step in, right? But most of it is internalized because that's what's going to drive him from 9th grade through the rest of his career.
That's right.
Because once you drop him off in college, just like yourself at Arizona, your parents wasn't there anymore.
That's right.
Right?
Absolutely,
and
they
so
were gone.
They were gone. So if you didn't want to wake up the train, they wasn't there. They were in Iowa, right? And so I think if you stage it in 3 different buckets and you allow it to organically transition to each bucket, you keep in the circumference of joy because you're living in the moments of each individual bucket as well. But if you punt the joy part and you go from when they're in 1st grade and you're already thinking they're going to be the number 1 pick for the Atlanta Braves.
That's right.
That's a lot of joy that you have already
diminished.
A struggle. Yeah, because now you've already went to 23 and they're 5.
That's right.
And so that's a big component of my own personal journey and what we try to foster in our household with MJ as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's so powerful. I hear you saying, because there's two ways that a parent can do it. A parent can be invited into the goal setting of their kid, or a parent can push the goals that they want on their kid. And so you're saying that, hey, if your child has goals and like a dream to play football, is your job early is just to come alongside and say, okay, hey, let's see if we can make that happen. Here's some goals that you should consider in order to do that. But the kid is actually driving it the whole way through.
Absolutely.
Parents aren't driving it. And I believe, I'll go out on a limb here, we get it wrong a lot of times as parents, because we see further down the road, and our kids might just want to be able to, hey, I just want to have fun with my soccer team.
Absolutely.
I'm not going to play soccer the rest of my life. I just want to go to here and have a good time. And you're trying to tell me how to kick with my left foot, and I just want to go out here and hang and, and just be a part of this team for just different reasons. And so that's really good. How do you work with other coaches that coach Michael Jr., and because you obviously have such a massive background of it, but at some point you're going to have to turn that over a little bit. And that can be a little hard for parents, because they're like, well, man, I've done all this up to now, and I'm going to stand on the sideline and I'm going to tell them what's going on. And that's not the best version.
Right.
So how do you go through this process eventually of turning Michael Jr. over to other coaches in his life?
We have a process, and what that is we really sit down. So whenever the off season is, we really internalize Michael's development.
Got it.
Because parents are always saying where their child is going to play before evaluating the level that he should play or the team he should play on.
Got it.
Right? And so we kind of reverse engineer that process to say, what we're going to do? We're going to focus on his development. So let's just say football for the sake of the conversation. The season gets over in December. From January through May, we focus on Michael's development. We don't know where he's going to play at the time. Right? And then once May comes, we start to say, okay, we are able to evaluate where he's at as a player. And then we have him write down the 3 schools that he wants to play for.
Oh, wow. So that's awesome.
And so then we have him characterize why. Right? And then we map his skill set and his development at that time to those schools. And then we'll go out and we'll have a conversation with the coaches and say, hey, and have the coach look at Michael to make sure that he can actually play at that school. So then that's where the marriage comes into play.
Got it.
And if it's a top tier school and the coach says yes, by evaluating Michael, he's met all the standards that we feel as though that we look for in a student athlete, and then it's a marriage, because then we don't have to do any other outside coaching, and the expectation has been mirrored initially.
That's right.
Right, and obviously coming through the process internally, I understand that it's going to take time. And it's going to take a long level of commitment, but you have a partnership that both people have initially went into it in comparison to my son is going to play at Mount Bethel, or my son is going to play at Walton or Pope or what have you, or any of the feeder programs, without really understanding where the marriage lies and what your child wants to do. And so from a coaching standpoint, obviously football is connected to my why. And I'm always willing to provide an intel or resource, come and coach, come and assist, whatever the coach deems fit. But my initial premise is to be dad. I really want to be dad. I don't want to be robbed of these moments. We only have one child. So I'm very big on that. Now, obviously, it hasn't worked out that well where I've always had to coach at some point.
Sometimes that happens. That's right.
And that's God's plan for me. And I'm really comfortable with that, because it's allowed me to not only focus on expanding and enhancing Michael's why, but really when I look back at the last, I would say 6 years, I've been able to have an influence and a voice with so many other kids. And I think back to my journey of coaches that is really being my extended fathers. And I take that very serious. And so,
absolutely.
Being able to connect to them in a plethora of different ways and enhance their perspective of what a student athlete entails. I tell them, the thing with Coach Dean is you never have to say that you didn't know or you didn't know why. And so overall, when we're looking at a program, that's one of the things. And then being faith-based as well is obviously a huge component as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's so good for parents to understand that in addition to the the coaching on the sport, that coaches play such a vital role in raising our kids.
Absolutely.
Because they take direction from somebody else, another adult in their life. They're accountable to somebody else inside of that. And that's where life comes into play later down the road, right? And so, one of the benefits of sports, and we might have hit on it before or not, but coaches that they love on your kids, they mean something. I look back to coaches I had in high school. I mean, he's a great friend of mine. I love him to this day. And man, he wore me out on the baseball field, and I didn't do things right a lot of times. And I love him for it. And I look back, and that accountability aspect was so great. So it's hard for parents to step back and let coach be coach. But that's really the very best thing at a certain point. If you're not coaching, you got to let somebody else coach your kid.
Yeah, and it shouldn't be hard if it was a decision that was made collectively.
Yeah, that's good.
So it's kind of a three-pronged deciation.
Yeah.
The coaches made it, your child has made it, and you've made it.
That's right.
So you're only a small piece, 30%, 33% of it, right?
Yeah.
It's parents that overthink it. And they're trying to perpetuate long term and what's happened previously with that program or that coach that makes it real heavy. But my overall advice would be to make it to where it's a 3-person committee. And making sure that it really ties into what's best for your child at that moment. Even with the camp that we run every summer, we're very big in making sure that we connect to each individual participant's why. And because each one is coming for a different reason, right? And that's something that as a staff we talk about in a plethora of different ways to make sure that we are enhancing that why while being an introductory component of the sport or the enhancement of the sport. Right? But without having a deep dive into that question initially, we're not going to really be able to connect with them and have them have a pleasurable experience. And I think that expands to any coach that they select as well.
I'm blown away that you run this camp at our campus every single summer.
We run it.
We run it. And it's so attached to the why of kids, because I think that's such a vital, just so important for us to make sure that we understand as adults looking outside of it and as parents with kids that are interested in sports, is they have this why attached to them. And I love it. Let's talk about maybe a couple different things here on parents. What about like expectations of parents on their athletes when they're growing up? Because that's a hard thing to manage as a parent. I can see that happen at times in my life, is you have an expectation that might not meet the expectation of your kid. How can we navigate that better? Is there a better way that we can do that? I mean, and we've talked about getting them together with coach. We talked about, establishing their why. What if we're still getting it wrong? What if we're just not doing it right?
Well, my question initially would be, what established the expectation?
So a lot of times in my mind, it would be that a parent didn't quite reach what they wanted to, or they have a little regret on their athletic past or another part. That's one. And the second would be, wow, I see like a lot of potential. Like them, and he's fast. He can catch. He can hit. She can shoot. She kicked the ball. I mean, all these like, oh my gosh, this is really good. We have to. And they jump to all these long range conclusions. So I think it's probably twofold. One, I've got some regret in my past. Two, I really see some great potential in my kid.
So I'll handle both. I'll talk through both. And the first one would be, obviously everyone has their own journey. And my journey was different than MJ's, right? And with that being said, if a parent did not accomplish everything on their particular sport that they felt like they should have, they have to then reassess why initially, right? And I think if they locked into that piece, maybe if it was hard work, it was dedication, what have you, and take those pain points and allow to make sure that your child is not falling into the same pitfalls that maybe you fell into, that keeps you in a positive oasis of the conversation. Right, because now awesome. As a parent, you're learning from the mistakes that you've made. You're making sure that your child doesn't make those same mistakes. That's the first thing I would internalize initially. But then after that, you have to still connect to your child to see how far does he want to take this.
That's
right?
Awesome.
Because then if he's only wanting to take it to a certain level and you've already extrapolated out to another level, there's going to be fragmentation there. So it's already friction, right? And so
absolutely.
And so from there, depending on the age group, right, it's still a process. You have to develop a process. You have to fine tune your process. I would really lock in to development, mindset, skill set. Right?
Mindset, skill set.
Because then if you're enhancing those things while still eliminating some of the pitfalls that maybe you've succumbed to in your athletic career, now it's always going to stay in a positive space for the most part.
Yeah, right.
Then the corrective piece, like you mentioned with your father, comes secondary because now, because most of the experience is positive, when there are some tough conversations, what they should be, right after a game, like you mentioned, hey, let's talk through what were some good things you did well, what were some bad things you did well, what were some things we need to correct. The foundational pieces are still always there in regards to we want you to succeed. We're here for you to succeed. We understand that you want to succeed. So there shouldn't be too heavy of a negative experience on a day-to-day interaction, right? From the parents that sees vision and sees their child can exceed in a particular sport, that's awesome, right? But you still have to get back to how do we get there? Because I've never seen an NFL player at 5 years old, right? And so no matter how much you expedite it, it's still a process. And so nevertheless, if you do see potential in your child, you look at Caitlin Clark that just had a phenomenal collegiate run, right? Most of her success that she speaks upon is through the hard work, the dedication, the skill set, the commitment.
That's right.
Right? And so no matter how athletically talented your son or daughter is, you still have to lock into those foundational touch points. And so as long as you keep those on the forefront and then back into the support group that he or she can always turn to and have the faith-based infrastructure as well, I think parents will calm down a little bit. And then lastly, don't live vicariously through your child. Right, I think that's the biggest thing with the social media hype and the likes and NILs and it's a lot of stuff that just makes it more convoluted than it needs to be. And it's a thievery of joy. And I think that at the end of the day, when you look back at your particular journey, if your child reached that particular level of expectation, it's about the journey, not the destination. And so as parents, I think most importantly, they will probably feel a little bit saddened that they got to the destination, but not proud of how they got there.
Got it. Yeah. Man, I love it. It's there's so much in there. We need to actually pull a blog post or something like that on that because we can pull so many different things that you said, and I love it. You keep coming back to this having centered around faith.
Absolutely.
And a lot of times that's not the conversation that happens, even for people that come to church. I mean, let's just be honest and put it out there. A lot of times sports are sports and faith is faith. How would you encourage parents to mold them together? And so you think about molding faith and sports. How can they mold together in a non-awkward way for their son or daughter?
First of all, pray.
Okay.
Yeah, like my parents, at a very young age, taught me how to pray. And we prayed together. We prayed before games. We prayed after games. Right, because it gave me peace. And in my darkest moments,
so good,
I would pray. I would drop a ball. I'm running back to the huddle, and I would pray. Because it calmed everything down. And so I think that's the first initial ingredient that a parent could do for their child is to teach them how to pray. And then from there, just understand that everything happens in God's purpose. I feel like God doesn't make any mistakes, and I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me.
Amen.
Right? And so nevertheless, when you have those foundational things, everything else is trivial. It seems important at that moment.
That's right.
But, when you really lock into your prayer, durations, your faith-based thought process, and then understanding that you've put in the work. And I firmly believe that if you put in the work, at some point, it's going to come to fruition.
That's right.
Right? And so when you have those things entrenched in your family's being, their DNA, then therefore your child is going to carry that, as I do, throughout the rest of his life. Right? Because, as they go through the highs and lows of life, they understand that, hey, I'm faith-based, I know how to pray, and I've worked hard. And so at some point, it's going to come to fruition for me. And therefore, you as a family are there to support them through the highs and lows, but also be repurposed in your faith as well.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that prayer is I love the team prayers that happen, and those are really, really great that happen. But I also find such power in a parent or parents praying over their son or daughter in a very specific way, leading into competition, leading out of a competition. And it's something that my wife and I do very much, as many times as we can, if we can put a hand on one of our kids. And you're right. It provides a sense of peace, and that there is bigger than just this game or match or basketball, whatever that might be, that it's bigger than that.
Absolutely.
And I believe through repetition, like you said, it just brings a calmness and a peace and an understanding of where we are in God's plan for our life. And so awesome. Michael, this has been a great conversation. I'm going to give you the floor. If there's anything else that you have for our parents, like I said, there's so much to cover. We could just keep going, but is there anything else that you have for our parents in raising their kids and, what you've succeeded in your life and looking back and raising your son with your wife? Is there anything else that you have for our parents on sports or faith or life or anything in general?
Yeah, I would just say enjoy the moment. You guys have been blessed to bring an amazing human into the world. I think that the more that you guys enjoy the moment, I think the more that you lock into the foundational triggers and touch points that has made the family successful is extremely important. I think overall, when you combine the faith-based initiative with the foundational touch points that sports brings, whatever comes after that, it's a blessing. Right? No matter how high or low they achieve up the totem pole of what they deem is successful from a sports perspective, they're going to become their best selves. And I think that as long as, from a parental perspective, that's the primary goal and focus, there's no loss in that.
That's right.
We always pray that God, for God to bless us to become our best selves and walk down the path that you've set for us. And obviously, with having that as a organically infective mechanism, that allows you to walk with confidence, which I think is extremely important, walk with strength, but also walk with humility as well. And so, that would be my advice to parents, is to enjoy every moment, allow your son or daughter to become their best selves. And as they continue to proceed through their life cycle, provide the faith-based and other foundational touch points that would deem for them to be successful.
It's so good. Parents, this is something that you might want to replay a couple times because all the information that Michael gave us is so powerful. In the end, here's the deal. Your family is super important. We know that. Your kids are amazingly important to you. We know that. Sports are a beautiful blessing that we have the ability to play and run around and be a part of a team and have accountability and dedication and set goals. And it can be a blessing to your family as well. But you have to pay attention to a few things, right? You have to make sure that God's at the center of all of that. You have to make sure that you're inviting your son or your daughter into the goal setting, and it's joy-filled, and it's not stealing and a thief of the joy in their life. And at the end of the day, sometimes we have to step back as parents, and we need to turn it over to somebody else, and that's a beautiful thing that can happen. But at the same time, that God's fully in control of that. And your group, the Atlanta Kings football camp, does that. You guys start with why, you start with faith, you breathe accountability and dedication, and we are incredibly honored and grateful to have you a part of Mount Bethel community and what you bring to our group. And I want to make sure that I get this right for the football camp, June 10 through 13, 9 to 12:30, and there's a registration link that we'll post, but you can also find that on our website, mtbethel.org, and you can look under the recreation ministry tab to find that as well. And we would love for you to connect in any way here at Mount Bethel. But if you have a son or daughter that's interested in football and would love to run around and be a part of what Michael brings to the table when it comes to the intersection of faith and sports, you got to go to the football camp this summer. And if there's anything that you need or any questions you have for Michael that I didn't cover today, man, post them, shoot them, email me. You can email me at matt.lake@mtbethel.org. I'll reach back out to Michael and we'll get your question answered. But this was a powerful conversation, my friend, and I'm honored to have been a part of it.
Same here, man. I thoroughly enjoyed having the conversation. Look forward to returning whenever you guys.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think we'll probably maybe have to do a round 2 on that and dive a little bit deeper. But thank you very much. Appreciate you very much being part of this. hope to see you guys soon. Hope you guys can tune in next time. Thanks for being a part of this conversation with Michael Dean, former NFL player, Carolina Panthers, but a man of God and working very hard to bring the why and faith to sports here in the East Cobb community. Thanks so much, buddy.
Thank you.